What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Just got off the phone with my buddy who's a tree service guy. He's from Pennsylvania. He's got a branch down here. He's telling me about all the different issues that they're having up there in Pennsylvania. Basically the ashwood tree, I guess. I'm not super versed in that landscape up there. But they had a fly or a beetle that's going after like all the elmwood. I guess it's elm, and then another one's going after the oak. And he was like, Trav, I'm not even kidding. Like within the next 5 or 10 years, we're gonna have like no trees in the state of Pennsylvania. Like they're just gonna all be dead. Unless like we can figure out some solution to this. I was like, is there any biological solutions? He's like, praying mantis like them. Other than that, not really. And they populate faster than praying mantis, so it's kind of pretty dire. He's like, if we had like a few weeks of really, really cold weather, it would slow them down because it would kill all their eggs. But we would need like -10, and it would need to be there for like 2 days or something like that to like actually officially kill these eggs. Other than that, no, man, like it's just spreading like wildfire, like literally like just spreading. He's like, my town, it's just insane, like the devastation. He's like, the crazy thing is it's gonna spread. Like it will eventually be in the southeast, and it'll be attacking our oak trees and other things like that. And there's nothing we can do about it. And I thought it was like, it's just more signs of the times. I'm not on this like super climate change new world order game where it's like climate change is happening, so the answer is more communism. I'm not, that's not me, but I'm a huge environmentalist, always have been. I'm a huge hippie, like, but I like to see private market solutions. I don't think there's anything that you can do in the public sector, any mandate that will ever actually solve anything. I think that'll only create more problems. So I'm kind of like, dude, there's a massive opportunity here, right? Like I'm looking at this from an entrepreneur and an investor's perspective. I'm like, who has these elmwoods and stuff? He's like, oh, only rich people now. Like some people replanted, but like literally you're talking like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars a tree. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Like, you know, like what about propagating that? And he's like, literally these bugs will go through and you'll have like 2 or 3 trees that will like survive a neighborhood and everything else is just decimated. Maybe you guys know a lot better and you guys can put stuff in the comments or link to good articles if you're well versed in this. I don't know the area, the geography, but I do know that down here we have this beetle that's going after pine trees. And I've noticed this like on pine properties where I've told my customers, my land clearing customers, I'm like, that pine needs to be gone and burned now. And everyone's like, oh, well, we'll get to it, or we'll wait for it to be fully dead. I'm like, no, like there's beetles in there. We need to put it on the ground. We need to burn it off now. So it doesn't spread. My neighbor down the road, he lost like 12 pine trees his last 2 years because of the beetles. And so it's like, man, how do you solve this thing? Cold winters would help. Cold winters would certainly help. But I don't think that you're going to get that through an ignition type of thing. I think that you're going to get this through like moving back or away from monocultures. I think that you get this by like a natural healing process, literally like a period that takes a while for us to make this transition and it to unwind. But I look at this and I look at things in terms of economics. I kind of have these different lenses, almost like glasses, like where you put on like one, like put on one, then you put on another, and like you start to kind of dial in, and I call them building mental models. And so I'm always looking to add a new lens to my mental models so I can put them on top of each other, try to get like a 3-dimensional view of what's going on to make an educated, weighted guess on like which way something might go so that I can benefit from that or help on a trend. And so I typically have viewed the world through that type of, you know, through creating these mental models. And the mental model I have at this point in time is like the Western society, like Western culture, has essentially at every single time chose to kick the can down the road instead of self-correct. And I had a great guy in the comments, Charge Mopar. You guys might see him. He leaves the best comments. His stuff is fabulous. Most of the time I'm like, he just needs to be running the, he just needs to be writing the write-ups on these videos because his comments are excellent. But he's basically like, look, the central planners are going to print the currency worthless until like 1, there's a revolution, or 2, there's an environmental catastrophe. And he's 100% right. To where I look at things a lot through economics, because that was my training. I came out, I studied econ and I studied finance, and I got degrees in those subjects. And I've just been into it. And then my first, you know, real big boy job was working in that field. And so I just dig it. That's just what I do. And he's right on the environmental catastrophe thing, where the economic thing has always been like, well, we'll just print currency at it. We'll just inflate. We'll cause problems. We'll paper over problems. But you do get to this point where my buddy that I was just on the phone with was like, dude, I'm telling you, I'm not even kidding you. Your grandkids are never gonna have bananas. I'm like, hold on, dude. I grow I got like 4 or 5 different varieties of bananas. I just picked up another one the other day. Like, you know, we're gonna have bananas. And he's like, well, you know the ones you buy at the store, all those come from like the Philippines or like, you know, South America, etc. They're like one type, the Chiquita ones. He's like, yeah, well, there's a disease that's killing those things. And because there's big monocultures, because they can grow these things commercially, it's just wiping out the bananas. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I'd love to hear from you guys if you know anything about that. So I don't know if that's true. But what he's getting to and what he's arriving at is like, dude, this is a problem because, you know, economics and business and people, you know, conducting these affairs essentially are going to cause an incredible environmental devastation that's going to be like pretty irreversible. Now I look at this and go like, what you need is a little depression, a little recession, where people start to grow their own stuff. They start to learn about like mixing in crops and doing like a lot of like not monoculture, and then they figure out like fertilizer is expensive and you don't really need fertilizer. There's ways to naturally fertilize, and you know, compost and bio ash and biochar and all that other stuff. And so I look at this and I'm like, you know, there's so many different things, so many different solutions here. But yeah, from a Western world, right? Like from this, you know, from this like this viewpoint right here, from like this guy like right next to you, like check this. I can't get it over. He's got all the bumper stickers. He's got the Biden bumper sticker. He's got the Black Lives Matter bumper sticker. He's got liberal AF bumper sticker. You know, this guy, right, is like, he's on my same train of thought. He's an environmentalist. I'm an environmentalist. The difference is that he wants to, you know, put stickers on the back of his car and have like big boys with guns direct resources, and I want the private market to direct resources, and he wants his team to be in and not the other team. And I look at that and laugh because I think that we're going to go to one of these two things. There's going to be a revolution at some point in time because the signals, the natural signals of like the world, of just the planet, get so distorted where you just have to have this massive reset event. And it might not be a globalist reset. It might just be like what happens when like monkeys on a rock have no bananas. like these things happen, they go bananas. But I look at this and my buddies hit me up. He's like, bro, dude, I'm telling you, your grandkids are probably never going to have those store-bought bananas, dude. It's probably never going to happen in their lifetime. And I kind of look at it, and I'm like, I look at it like an entrepreneur and an investor, and those are two very different sides of one coin. Being an investor is very different than being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur, you're always looking at the positive. An investor, you're always looking at the negative. And so, you know, I look at it and I go, well, I know I can seed off of bananas. There actually is a way to do that. I could theoretically probably start inventorying those seeds, and then I'll have that genetic material. And then when this disease is taking its toll, you know, many years from now, that value of those seeds will be worth like quite substantial. Or you just, you know, keep a crop of bananas alive, like where they don't die, like, you know, or keep them isolated, you know, like where there's a will, there's a way. And he basically was like, well, I mean, yeah, Trav, you're probably right on a lot of those things, but bananas are going to be super expensive. It'll only be like rich people that have bananas. And I'll be like, yeah, I mean, it was, you know, tomatoes used to be like that. Tomatoes in the 1700s were a very wealthy person thing. And then eventually people seeded them off, and they were actually ornamental plants to begin with, like very nice, attractive looking things. People liked them. And then they became what we now know as the tomato. And then they got genetically modified and they became even more prevalent. And I'm actually going out of my way to find things that are non-genetically modified to harvest those seeds for that same purpose. But I look at this and I look at that comment from a subscriber in the audience here, and he's absolutely right. It's like, that's kind of the path that we're on. I would like to see the central planners, or at least maybe market forces. I'm always hopeful that the market is stronger than the central planners, and then at some point in time you just can't kick the can down the road anymore because the market forces are so strong. It's stronger than the money printer. And so what happens is you pull that rubber band back, and then it just snaps like a bow and arrow, and then it just snaps the other way. And I share these things because I really genuinely think that the solution moving forward is a capitalist-like environmentalist movement. I don't have a good word for that at all. It's terrible wording all around on that. But the solution here is literally a metamodernism movement. I know that's not very descriptive either, but it's like people growing non-monocultures that will see a rise in their income because of an increase in prices could actually prevent this environmental catastrophe that's going to eventually come, or some sort of crazy revolution like moment, because you keep going down this path of like more stuff, increase the level of stuff. Oh, GDP is doing wonderful. And it's like, what's GDP? Gross domestic product? Like, that's measuring the amount of stuff we make? Like, that's not a metric of like human well-being. And the environmentalists, they don't quite have it right either. And I disagree with the liberals on a lot of their method, because I don't think they really care. I think that they really care about being in power. And as do both political sides of the spectrum there. But I think that the longer term solution, as I'm looking at this as an entrepreneur, as an investor, you know, what are the big opportunities? Solving that ash problem, like up there, up in the Northeast, figuring out a natural predator or a way to kill off those bugs. Not really digging the pesticide treatment thing. I don't think that that's a solution. You need something that's going to work in like national forests and stuff. You can't just literally tag every single tree. I mean, I guess you could if you had enough labor and enough, but that's not really a solution. So I look at this stuff and I go, and then he does say like, well, there'll be like 1 or 2 trees that'll survive. And I'm like, okay. What sucks is that if we start now, there'll be woods in Pennsylvania for my grandkids to see. If we start now, but there won't for my kids. You know, like I was just hunting Pennsylvania last month. We were hunting deer up there, and it was thick. It was, and I'm just sitting there thinking like at this farm that we were hunting, what it would look like with no hardwoods out there. You know, just be field and prairie, and you know, and all things go in cycles. So I'm not like a doom and gloom, like, oh, this is gonna, you know, it's gonna be wrecked forever. Like, no, like, what are the consequences of having like prairie grasslands over the entire state of Pennsylvania? It becomes a cattle area, you know, it becomes, you know, buffalo move out, you know, it becomes a wild buffalo area. The trees that survive repropagate, and the opportunity becomes, you know, repropagating. You get cold winters, you end up with like, you know, it gets really bad, you kill half the trees, and then you have this strike of 10 years of just really bitter cold winters. You know, so I see this as like, nature is always healing itself, but the opportunities, like look around at the opportunities. I guess I'll wrap with that, is like, there's so many opportunities that will unfold that are probably not unfolding at the very moment. I had a conversation with Blake Albertson this morning for like an hour, B&B Lawn Care. A lot of you may know him. Huge channel, like 30,000, 35,000 subs. And he was like, dude, where are the business opportunities right now, man? I'm like, dude, this environmental, like, dude, like Metamodernism, growing like food forests, like get out of, like, move people from lawn care into growing their own food. Use the land, like, and that yard, that space to grow whatever can grow there, because it's just good for you, it's good for the environment, it's good for America. Like, it's just freaking good. But I said at the same time, at the very moment, I don't see anything being better as far as investable than like Bitcoin or gold or silver. Like, I can't outperform Bitcoin. I've failed for like the last 10 years. Like, nothing I have done has outperformed it. Even this year, if you were in a dollar cost average every single week, and I know I'll lose a lot of you on the crypto talk, but I'm just using it as a gauge, and I use Bitcoin as a report card for the US dollar. I look at Bitcoin as like, what is it telling me about the US dollar and the US economy? I see it as a report card, and it tells me that it's failing. When Bitcoin was at a lot lower levels, I was like, okay, the US economy still has a leg to stand on. Now that Bitcoin, like, you know, struggles and then bounces right back all the time now, I'm like, oh man, it really shows the weakness of the dollar. I told him, I said, I don't see anything better at the moment to invest in than literally just do what I'm doing, make money, and like just save it in Bitcoin. But at some point, you can't eat Bitcoin. You have to pull your capital out, a thing to invest in to get a return, when you no longer can get a 27%, you know, return for literally doing nothing. I mean, when it becomes very boring, when it gets larger, like when it becomes just, oh yeah, it went up 5% this year, it went down 5% this year. When it becomes boring, what are the opportunities? Hey guys, thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, and as always, until next video, I'll see you down in the comments.